Anna.
Chatila.
Prověřit. Mucha.
And you see now there'll be Russian people going, that's not right. I mean, the evening without Kate Bush that you saw, I made that with my collaborator, Russell Lucas, and we made it in our living room, borrowed the props, found them in charity shops. It was absolutely done on a shoestring. And that show has now, pays my mortgage. Been doing it for, 6-7 years. And the winner would win a plate of cheese and crackers. And my dad actually entered, even though he was a life insurance salesman, and he won the coveted cheese and cracker platter. So it's never too late to follow your dreams, folks. And I loved singing. I really loved singing. I used to sing in 11 choirs.
11?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And then I did my first solo show, which was called Drag King. And that was on at 1:00 in the morning with a free shot of vodka at C venues. And I had no idea what I was doing. And then they cast me. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to learn to improvise. And it was hard. It was hard. I had to really abandon the desire to be good. And that's not something I've achieved. That's a work in progress.
It's variety.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Variety Show podcast. Now, today's guest is an actress, writer, director, improviser, and internationally renowned cabaret performer. I read somewhere you're a cabaret whore. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but we'll get on to that later. Who I saw recently myself perform a brilliant show which was a homage to Kate Bush, which I think you can see on your T-shirt.
Shameless publicity.
These
are not available in the shops. I only had this made so I could advertise my show as I walked around.
Excellent. An Evening Without Kate Bush, which I saw a couple of weeks ago at the Underbelly in Soho and was fantastic. So welcome, Sarah-Louise Young. Or Sly. Sly, taking all the initials.
I know. My mother deliberately gave me another name, Catherine, so that people wouldn't call me Sly, but no one knows that. So I am Sly.
So where would have Catherine gone?
Sarah-Louise, Catherine Young. And I added the hyphen myself because there is an adult entertainer of the same name. There is. And she is prolific. She's also from Kent and she's only a little bit older than me.
Prolific, that's always the word that's used.
Yeah, she has a seminal body of work. She's actually very, very impressive. She was the first British porn star to make £1 million from a movie. And if Wikipedia is correct, she retired at the age of 27 to become a lawyer in Germany to fight for the rights of people in the sex industry. I think she's amazing.
Well, there's a lesson.
Yeah, I made a terrible show years ago called Confessions of a Paralysed Porn Star. And it was an utter disaster, but it taught me, it was the biggest failure of my entire life. And it was about her and me. And although it was a disastrous show, it was a necessary piece in the jigsaw of my creative
work. I'm sure that's
work.
True, isn't it? That you have to, everything you put on is, you never quite know. And sometimes the failures are the things which will lead you to your successes.
It was the show I learned how to make a show on.
We can get back. We can get back there. So tell me, I always like to start, funny enough, at the very beginning. So where are you from originally?
I'm from Kent. I ought to talk like that because that's a Kent accent. It's a bit like.
It sounds a bit like the Essex accent.
It is a bit. It's a bit London as well. Yeah. But my mum was
quite. I just say what good accent you do.
Well, probably the women from Kent will be going, that's not my accent. It's not my accent. From Canterbury, from Kent, where I grew up with my mum and my 4 older brothers. My parents divorced a very long time ago. You sent me the list of questions in advance and it said, what did your parents do? And I thought, divorce.
That's what they did. Fair enough. But I suppose I was, other than that, interested in whether there was sort of performance in your blood, was whether either your mother or your father did what you do or showed any.
It's my firm belief that every human being is creative. I think we are born creative and we tell stories. And I think everyone in my family is creative, even if they haven't gone on and led a career in the arts. My mum became a teacher. My dad played the church organ and he loved to get up and do a bit of Flanders and Swan after dinner.
We all love a bit of Flanders and Swan.
We like a bit of Flanders and Swan. I used to run a talent competition on the Battersea Barge with my friend Paulus called Cheese and Crackers, and the winner would win a plate of cheese and crackers. And my dad actually entered, even though he was a life insurance salesman, and he won the coveted cheese and cracker platter. So it's never too late to follow your dreams, folks.
Never too late to follow. No,
and he sang Mud, Mud, Glorious Mud. That was the big party stopper, showstopper song.
Mud, Mud, Glorious Mud. Yeah. I think I've done that one, to be honest.
It's a great song.
It is a great song.
But no, no one officially went into the arts in my family. My mum did a quite astonishing job of bringing us up on her own. She had 5 children under the age of 10, and brought us up on very hand-to-mouth, very like benefits, nothing. And then when she was in her, I think 40s, she got her degree and went out and became a teacher, and was very impressive. We had a very strong work ethic in our house, definitely.
And that, I suppose, and we'll get onto this, but what it takes to become successful performing, putting work in, whatever that is, I presume is an important, well, it clearly is an important bit. It just doesn't happen, does it?
Well, there's the theory of the 10,000 hours.
Yes.
I think there were definitely people I was at university with. My mum was absolutely determined you went to do university first. So I went to do, in the end, I was going to do theology, and then I went to do French and Spanish.
You could have done the church organ.
I don't believe...
With your theology, it could have been you could have done a whole sort of theatrical God thing.
Do you want to be my manager? This is a great idea for a show. There were lots of people at university who came from money and came from privilege, I would say. And I do think a lot of those people had a certain advantage in terms of just having the support, financial support, and I did 15 years really of temp jobs I hated. I was to say I wiped tables and bottoms and, everything in between. But I do think it makes you very... If you are determined, you will create work. But it's been a very long and steady process. And I think I only really found my artistic voice in my 30s. I had to do an awful lot of experimenting.
So before that, had you performed earlier on in your life? So when you were growing up, let's have a look at that picture of you age 7, you said? 7?
7 years.
So were you performing?
I don't know who cut that fringe.
Other than the hair.
It was deeply annoying to everyone in my family. I was tap dancing in the kitchen. And again, we got free lessons. Lovely Miss Judy Kim School of Dance gave me free dance lessons because we had no money. Gave me free tap and ballet.
You're lucky there, because this is a theme that comes up again and again. And actually, you've just touched on it. The inequality of being able to achieve something within the arts. Because if you don't have access to lessons, be it piano lessons, dance lessons, acting lessons, it's going to be very hard. And if you don't have the money...
It's the supply and demand of the performing arts is already out of whack. So you shouldn't go into it thinking it's fair. But absolutely, if you've got a budget and you don't have to worry about your rent, or you've got classes or one-to-one tutoring, of course that's amazing. It's still no guarantee that you're going to make work, but I do think in a way having nothing, my expectations were so low. I mean, the evening with Kate Bush that you saw, I made that with my collaborator Russell Lucas, and we made it in our living room, and I borrowed the props, found them in charity shops. It was absolutely done on a shoestring, and that show has now pays my mortgage. Been doing it for 6-7 years,
which is amazing.
And I think it's interesting. I've never had Arts Council funding directly. I've been involved in other people's projects where they have. And I do know people who'll say, well, I wanted to make that show, but I didn't get the funding, so I didn't. And I think if you have a story to tell, you can stand up on a stage on your own, if you can get there, and tell a story in a pub, in a scratch night. And I think a lot of people put boundaries in front of them and think, well, I can't do it because. And actually, if you've got nothing, you just go, well, I'll just put it together with what I've got.
No, I agree. So going back to 7-year-old, you were already tap dancing and you had your dance lessons.
Yeah, and I loved singing. I really loved singing. I used to sing in 11 choirs.
11?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. 2 on a Sunday and Saturday.
What was these traditional sort of churchy type choirs?
All sorts. Church choirs, folk choirs, East Kent Girls Choir, the Canterbury Chorus Society. I think I was the youngest person in the Canterbury Chorus Society with my little blue hair as a 13-year-old. So I loved singing, but I didn't think it was a thing you did. You weren't going to do that for a job, because how was that going to work? And then when I was 13, I met my best friend, who's my best man at my wedding as well, Paulus. And he'd been a child actor, so he had a completely different approach to it. And he was putting on these variety shows, raising money for charity. And so I fell into that with him when I was sort of 13, 14. And then we just basically, and we still work together now. I directed his show about Victoria Wood, Looking for My Friend, and we're still making stuff together. So there was very much a feeling of just get it, just book a stage and do it. We didn't know what we were doing. We're making it up as we went along. But it wasn't until I was at university and then I went to the Edinburgh Fringe, and that completely blew my mind. Just the type of theatre, the fact that you could stand on your own with a chair in front of an audience and tell a story, and you could just be that immediate with an audience.
You did do, if I'm right, you did do a drama degree?
I did academic drama and English, which I got into I went to do French and Spanish, and then on the first day met all these drama students and went, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake. Snuck in, didn't have the right GCSEs, didn't have the right A-levels, anything, snuck in and got my degree by the skin of my teeth. But really, I spent most of my time at university directing shows, doing choreography, making props, costumes, performing, and then taking stuff to the Edinburgh Fringe. So that for me was the place of going and seeing things, Italian productions of Huis Clos, crazy street performers, everything, and just thinking, oh, there is so much more to theatre than, touring productions of An Ideal Husband.
Yes.
Nothing against touring productions for An Ideal Husband. It's just the first job I said no to.
Seriously?
Yes, I was offered a 5-month tour of An Ideal Husband and I said no. Oh, sliding doors, who knows? There's nothing wrong with it. I just did some other stuff instead.
Well, no, absolutely right. So growing up when you're in your teens or even in university, were there any particular people, I don't know, on TV or that you've seen who were your inspirations, I suppose, people that you thought they're great?
Yeah, Victoria Wood, Marty Kane, of course, the comedy strip, all of the young ones. And then I started listening to Fascinating Aïda. Paulus, my friend, had an album of Fascinating Aïda and we were listening to their comedy songs. So there was Fascinating Aïda, Victoria Wood and Tom Lehrer. And then 22 years later, I ended up guesting for them as a soprano.
Which was Fascinating Aïda?
Yeah, it was such a surreal moment. I had loved them for decades.
Wow.
And then Liza needed a year out and they invited me to come and sing with them. So that was a real kind of pinch me moment of what am I? We're literally with the National Theatre of Cabaret. This is insane.
No, absolutely. So
Yeah.
or someone else I'd had on this podcast, I don't know if you know Bounder and Cad. So,
Yes, yeah, they're great.
They're very much of that Fascinating Aïda mould. So
Yeah.
witty songs,
Yeah.
parodies of whatever. And I think we were in Crazy Coq's Talking and Dilly Keane came in. So just to have all of them together, you felt that was, that was definitely a fantastic
That's a
moment.
huge, I feel like my feet are definitely anchored in vaudeville, music hall, those origins of the spit and sawdust of getting out and performing. And after the terrible show that I made a better show a few years later. And there was a kind of golden time around 2009, 2010, 11, 12, when Cabaret had this massive resurgence in the UK. And you could go on a Friday night and jump from the Café de Paris, nip across to the grill room, nip across to,
Can I just ask you, people talked about this at Cabaret. How did you define it? What does that mean, Cabaret?
I'm not militant in my definition. Some people are very, very militant and I'm not. For me, what I feel is that as a piece of Cabaret should acknowledge the audience and be affected by the audience. So it's a performance with the audience. So I don't believe you can do Cabaret in a 2,500 seater venue where you don't change a single word and you just do your performance at them. I don't think that's Cabaret. Even if it's got songs and jokes and things. For me, it's about the relationship with the audience.
It's sort of interactivity,
It doesn't have to be direct, but the show and the audience are in an alchemy and there should be music. That's important. I mean, the original version of Cabaret, it had to have tables and chairs and possibly food. And obviously, if you go back to the Black Cat in Paris, it could be very political.
Yes,
it could be very present.
Yes, in Cabaret Voltaire and all that type of stuff. But in terms of the actual acts that can perform, it could be anything. It could be burlesque. It could be a singer.
Yeah.
It could be.
It usually has music, I believe. But again, I think it's evolved. And, thankfully, we are moving away from the idea that Cabaret is just a girl in a black dress sings Cry Me a River. But I think within Cabaret, there can be, circus, burlesque, mime.
Yeah.
There's so many people. If it's helpful to call yourself Cabaret, for me, I'm a storyteller. So I might use puppetry, I might use mime, I might use video projection, I might use dance. It's just whatever serves that story best. And it happens to be that the world of Cabaret has allowed me to create work that is interactive and playful.
You left university as an academic dramaturg, and you went to Edinburgh, you say, where you woke you to the possibilities of what you could do. There was a point, I presume, where you could have gone down the more serious acting route.
I don't know if that was ever going to be me. So when I left university, I went straight to the Edinburgh Fringe and did 4 different shows a day. Kids show in the morning, then I flyered, and then I lit a show. And then I played Mrs. Burkoff in Torch Song Trilogy when I was about 22. It was so inappropriate. And then I did my first solo show, which was called Drag King. And that was on at 1:00 in the morning with a free shot of vodka at C venues. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I did it. And I finished the Edinburgh Fringe. I'd lost about 2 stone. I had no money. I was just completely exhausted. And I was the happiest I'd ever been. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to make work. And then I did 1 year of musical theatre at Mountview. So I guess I left that training, having had a conventional musical theatre training, but I was already steeped in all of this kind of Cabaret world. So my 20s and the beginning of my 30s were a very odd dance between occasionally popping up as a guest lead on Casualty and, I think I shot a regular who was pregnant, got into trouble, did a bit of Holby, did a K melodrama.
All the stuff.
And did a bit of telly, which I really loved. But then this immediacy, this kick of being able to have an idea in the morning, get it on stage in the evening and finding out if something worked or not.
Because obviously it isn't as easy as that. The process of you creating a show, how does that work?
That's huge. There's a lot of Post-it notes. I don't have a formula.
Okay, the initial idea, your Kate Bush idea, or you did something about, what was the long one you said you did before that?
Oh, Julie Madly Deeply.
So that was about
Yeah.
Julie Andrews, I suppose.
Yeah.
So where does the idea come from? Was it out the ether? You just...
I think I have about 10 ideas in me at once. And then at a certain point, that idea becomes more alive in you. And that might be because of something in the zeitgeist. It might be because you run into the right collaborator. You know, there's no such thing as a solo show. You're always working with an audience. I try and bring in really great directors or movement coaches. So the Julie idea came about because I was already in Australia doing Cabaret Hall, which was a multi-character show.
Oh, that's
and I came up with an idea with my producer at the time to do a show about Julie Andrews. And I'd always been a fan, but I was fascinated by the fact that she didn't sing anymore because of her operation on her voice and how much misunderstanding there was around that and what happened. And I've been very interested in voice and the shame that singers experience if they lose their voices. I made another show about voice loss called The Silent Treatment.
Sorry, so you were interested in the relationship between the singer and their own voice.
The relationship with the audience and our expectation of the singer and their voice, the sense of ownership that people had of her. She was treated abysmally after she lost her voice. She had this big, 2010, she did this big concert at the O2 and it was misadvertised as a musical evening with Julie Andrews. And the press were horrible to her because she didn't sing, because she couldn't sing. She had a wonderful orchestra and she had these younger singers. And so I went in with I didn't just want to tell the story of Julie Andrews' life because I'm not interested in Wikipedia Live with songs. Although that was the first version we made. I think you have to have a reason to tell the story. And for me, I had this sense of there is a situation I want to explore, the dynamic between the audience and the artist. I like her body. I'm interested in her body of work. And so for me, being clear about why I want to tell the story is important. Then you have to look at the how. And for every show that I make, I get a huge piece of paper on the floor and I divide it into 4. And I have 4 different boxes. And one of them is I imagine the show's already made and I write down what the audience are saying about it as they're leaving. And then in another box, I put in all of the different kind of theatre language I might want to play with: mime, puppetry, song, voiceover, silence. And then in another box, I will put any special skills or anything I'm particularly interested in exploring. And then in the other box is my secret box of my own private secret desires for that piece of theatre. And that might be peer recognition, good reviews, making enough money to pay my rent, a chance to work with new collaborators. And I use that as a kind of map through the creative process. And if I get lost, I think, right, who am I not serving? Have I forgotten about the audience? Have I got stuck in telling it in this way and maybe I could tell it with some other way? So that's the only consistency that I have, that quadrant, which I've developed over time with other people. But I don't have a blueprint. And the show I'm making at the moment is complete. I mean, oh gosh, I'm learning to do fan dancing and painting and animation and a whole bunch of things that I wasn't expecting because the story has called that way of making it out of me. Jack of all trades, master of none. Definitely.
Or master of all.
No.
Doesn't the way the story leads you, it takes you on the journey as opposed to you're being in charge of the story?
It depends if I've written the story or not.
But something like, if you're dealing with people's real lives, you are somewhat constrained by that, aren't you? You can't tell lies. Just
tell that to most biopic makers.
Yes,
with Julie
true.
Andrews, we had a choice about where we started and ended her story. And yes, there were definitely beats and there were chronological things we wanted to explore. But my wonderful collaborator, Russell, who also made the Evening Without Kate Bush, he set me endless improvisations. I think I spent one day improvising as a chalk penguin. But so when we were talking about her adolescence, instead of just saying, and then this happened and this happened, we took the horse racing scene from My Fair Lady and we meshed them together so that kind of urgency and passion of becoming a teenager and being full of hormones and all these things happening to you then was embedded into the theatrical conceit of a horse race and watching it and observing. And so we got to really play with timelines and play with different songs popping up in different moments. And what that show ignited in us, which was why we made the Kate Show, was this, and I think leads into one of your questions, was this incredible honor and responsibility when you are talking about an icon that people love. And that show really, really showed us how, she's their Christmas. She's their childhood, Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music. So you have this room fizzing with all of these little pilot lights, waiting to see their Julie, waiting to have their memory explored, waiting for you to sing the song that they love. And that's such a potent thing to cook with. So that then when we came to make An Evening Without Kate Bush, which is a very different show, we thought, right, these songs, each of these songs, they're going to trigger a different memory in someone. How do we work that to our advantage and how do we celebrate that? And that's what we ended up with, was actually every song gets a different treatment and a different fan's experience.
You then must feel some sort of responsibility then.
Huge responsibility.
Both towards the person, but more towards their fans, I suppose, the people who hold, and you say, these icon and their memories within them. And
that's why they're part of the show. That I can't just do this show at people. We collected stories. We had a piece of paper pinned up on the wall during rehearsals, make a show that if Kate Bush walked in, she would approve of. And same with the Julie show. I think you have to honour that, whether someone is alive or dead. It doesn't mean you can't be creative and playful. But what we tried to do with the Kate show is make it in the spirit of Kate Bush. And she is playful and creative and anarchic. And hopefully the play is that too.
And within that, how much, you talked about improvisation, how much of that would be improvised?
During the show or during the process?
During the show.
To me, it's like having really good stepping stones. Those stones are set. I'm going to get from here to here to here to here. And then there are places where I know that there is freedom. So inviting the audience to share their favourite songs to me is a wonderful opportunity to gather data, stories, things that are unique to that audience that then I can weave in later. But it's highly curated chaos. So some things are set, some things are not set. And I think audiences enjoy feeling that the show is just for them.
What I've always thought with all entertainment, actually, all live entertainment, A is the feeling that anything can go wrong at any point, that you're entering an area where perfection is not only not going to happen, it's not actually required. You know what I mean? Yeah. We live in an age where so much is about everything being perfect.
Yeah.
And we forget that sometimes humanity is not in the perfection, it's in the imperfection.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, when you go and see a show, or if you as a performer, each show is completely different. Well, not completely different. Each night is a new experience. So you can go and see your show more than once, and every night will be slightly different, or very different.
I think it's a privilege to spend time with people. This here is a privilege because we've got one life, I think. And to be in the same room with people is a privilege. So for me to be in the same room with 50 people, 100 people, 800 people, they've all chosen in that moment to come and spend that time with me. And I want them to feel like their presence was part of the experience. I think all of us fundamentally want to be seen and heard and noticed. And most of us, even if you go to the theatre for pure escapism, you're still kind of wanting to see something you recognise or connect with. It's why we tell jokes and someone laughs and we go, oh, I feel understood. And I think that happens in all live entertainment. I think I'm a massive believer in the community that theatre can create. And I think especially now where we are so divided, to unite a group of people on the one thing that they are united on. If you pan out and ask them their politics, there could be a whole bunch of crazy opinions. But in that moment, everyone's there because they love music or they chose to come out on a Thursday afternoon,
That's true. So you do a bit of improvisation or some improvisation within your plays that you create. But I noticed you also you were in the Showstoppers for some time.
I was. I did 10 years with them.
And that's a long time. And that is an improvised show, which I think I've also seen.
I was a late onset improviser. I came to it in my mid-30s.
Because that's a definite skill, isn't it? I mean...
Yeah, it was an incredible opportunity to learn. They had just formed a year before. It was the last project with the late, great Ken Campbell. And I was very lucky. I did a few improv classes with Dylan Emery, who's one of the artistic directors, and they just happened to be looking for people. And I auditioned. I was so chilled because I was like, I'm not going to get in. I don't know what I'm doing. And then they cast me and I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to learn to improvise. And it was hard. It was hard. I had to really abandon the desire to be good. And that's not something I've achieved. That's a work in progress. We all want to be good and to fail publicly and fail. But there's such a supportive, amazing. And funnily, for the new show, The Bob Ross Effect, I'm working with Ali James, who's in Showstopper, Jordan Clark, who's in Showstopper, Jordan Paul Clark, and doing some animation with Andrew Pugsley, who's in Showstopper. And Dylan Emery, who's one of the artistic directors, is playing guitar. And I thought, hold on a minute. I'm still working with them, just not in it. But in the end, I chose to leave after 10 years because it's a show that you need to be present for. The more you connect, like if you're with friends, you start to finish each other's sentences and get in group mind. And I just kept being away on tour. And I thought, you know what? I feel like I'm not quite here enough to make this feel like I can commit. So in the end, I decided to focus more on my solo work. But it's a big chunk of my life. It's a fifth of my life. Oh my gosh, it's a fifth of my life with Showstopper. That's a lot.
And that toured, and that was on in the West End. That was on
everywhere.
Yeah,
I did. I'm very proud to have been in that run when we got our Olivier.
And that was a improvised musical, wasn't it? And people shout out genres or all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a structure, I presume, like you always do.
Well, we study story, and I think they usually liken it to being a bit like football. You know, you can practice moves, you can know how to kick a ball, but until you get out onto the pitch, you don't know who you're playing or how you're playing. And it's very well structured that the chair will ask the audience for some genres and a title. But really, the longer they've been going on now, they're so free. It's wonderful, really. But you have to study musicals, obviously, and understand how musicals work.
Well, that's my expertise. That's my special subject. Rather.
Who are your favourite composers? Do you have favourite composers?
Stephen Sondheim, of course. Of course.
Oh, he has a huge influence on me.
I saw Into the Woods recently, which was
at the Bridge. Oh, I've heard such good things. I'd love to see that.
One of the best things I've seen. On the other hand, on the other side of the equation, Avenue Q was...
Yeah, it's a great show.
Great show.
Do you like Fun Home? That's got to be one for your book.
That does.
Fun Home is really interesting. It's based on a graphic novel, and the lead character in it, you see them at 3 different ages, and so they appear. I don't want to spoil it for you. Fun Home.
Where's that on that?
It's been on. It's been on and gone in various times. But listen to the. I
haven't even heard of that.
Listen to the album. It's really fascinating.
So much of a specialist subject that is. Then.
Oh, it's great. But funny, if you mentioned about Sondheim, when I was 14, 15, a friend's dad was doing a flat clearance, and he gave me a pile of vinyl, and in that vinyl was an Edith Piaf album, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin, and a double Stephen Sondheim album. I'm listening to Alexis Smith sing "Could I Leave You," life-changing performance. That was incredible. So that definitely, along with the Tom Lehrer and and being taken to the theatre as a kid. Although we didn't have any money, my mum would take us to the university productions, beg, borrow, and steal to get us to see Shakespeare.
I remember the first thing I saw was Half a Sixpence performed by the London Transport Players.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah, I wonder if they exist still. Probably not anymore.
Oh, see, that's a show.
Just to think that London Transport
had some players.
Had a theatre group made up of people who were on the tube, on the buses. Isn't that amazing?
That's joyful. What a lovely thought.
But who knows? Probably not, unfortunately, anymore.
We haven't got time now, have they?
We haven't got time, no. Rejection.
Yes.
Can you handle it? Still? Not?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you get older, you realise that any interview, any audition is a shared transaction. So I cannot possibly be right for every job. It's much harder if you go for something and you really feel like you should be the right person. I make a point of seeing things I'm not cast in because I'm interested to see who they choose. But also, I mean, you know that there are politics involved. You know that how many social media people you've got. And to be honest, I have to say it's been a very long time since I've had to audition for anything. So I don't feel like my hat is in that ring.
But actually, this goes back to something you said, which I think is very important, that not to be reliant on other people, not to be reliant on people casting you, not to be reliant on people raising money, not to be reliant on producers, to have your own show where you are responsible for everything. If you're able to do that, it's a good place to be because you're not reliant on anyone else, other than an audience.
No, I mean, and it's a huge amount of work.
No, of course.
It was never the plan, but I cannot imagine now looking back as I am making my 17th or 18th show that wasn't the journey, but it was never the plan. I had friends who was in the same show in the West End for 3 years and they never got bored. And I know I would be naughty and start malfunctioning. So I just know that I'm not cut out to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. I think it's different if you create a role. Maybe you have a slightly longer shelf life of something. But I do panto most years and I love that in its perfect length of time. I'm very lucky. I'm going back to Lighthouse Pool for my 3rd year as the evil villain. And for me, it's so lovely with gorgeous Chris Jarvis, who's the writer and the dame and the director, to be in a company at least once a year, to come back to being in a company, to not being in charge, to not having to be, doing the marketing or anything like that, and just to be playing with other people. And it's an absolute joy. It's a beautiful venue. So I'm very, very lucky that is available to me.
We had a lovely, I don't know if you know Andrew Robley. He's a
No, I don't know.
He's a pantomime, old school pantomime dame before Christmas. And he had some very funny stories about panto. It's such a good tradition, isn't it? And it's unique. It's
all of those art forms coming together.
Yeah, it is.
Musical theatre, vaudeville, clowning, stand-up comedy, improv. I haven't answered your question about rejection because I think it actually covers a lot of different things, doesn't it? You can be rejected because you've read a bad review of your work. You can be rejected because...
I suppose rejection then's the wrong word. Being judged, because you're constantly being judged.
Yeah.
Your audiences are judging you.
Yeah,
You're judging yourself.
I want everyone who comes to see my shows to enjoy themselves. It's not possible for that to be the case. There's no piece of art that's ever been made in the world that is universally loved by everyone. And so I have to work towards the people who want to be there, and I have to accept. And it does hurt if someone doesn't love the work, but I can only present the work. And so sometimes, I mean, very rarely, someone might speak out on social media and say that it wasn't for them. And I just have to think, oh, well, thanks for coming. Thanks for giving it a shot.
Well, that's sort of fair enough, I suppose, not being for them, because you're right.
It can't be for everybody. And sometimes people wish it was a different show. And I actually signpost people and go, oh, listen, if you just want a tribute, go to these people. They're brilliant. Or if you just, but even with critics, a lot of people are very down on critics and I'm not. I think a really good reviewer is part of our ecosystem. A really good reviewer is chronicling the work and making an archive and sees your work in the context of other things you've done. And I think we need them. And they can be, there's a lot of people that are self-appointed critics and just blagging free tickets. And maybe they're a bit more frustrating.
But also they're
still audience members.
But we're all critics on some level. You go to a show and your friends ask you, what did you think? And you'll say, well, it was fantastic, or it wasn't. We all have our views. And that's half the...
We shouldn't all express them, I feel. Sometimes people should just keep them. If I don't like something, I just keep it to myself and might tell a friend. Don't put it on social media. No.
Oh, no, I wouldn't put it on social media.
Why would I put it on social media?
But you tell your friend, surely. If someone
and I'd only tell the artist if they ask me directly for feedback. But people are very strange. Some unsolicited feedback people think that you need. And I think,
No. I would never. No, I don't think I'd do that. But I think that's the joy, again, of live performances. We all have our views. And, I've been in theatres quite a number of times where the audience has given a standing ovation. I've been the only person sitting down.
Yeah, and you just think, oh, gosh, that wasn't for me. I missed something. What did I miss there?
Well, no, I don't think I've missed something. I think
they've
missed something.
But isn't it that thing, that how you're feeling that day, how you slept, what's going on in your life can impact what you want from that piece of theatre.
No, but that's true. And also for you as a performer, you're not in control of the general mood of the audience as they walk in. There's some things you can't control. If there's a general swathe of bad moodness because of who knows what weather or whatever it may be, that's just what it is.
It's the strangest thing. My friend Pippa Evans, who's also from Showstopper, a brilliant performer, two things she said to me, very wise. One, she said, the more people who love you by definition, the more people will dislike you. If you just look at, 100 people and one person disliking you and then 10,000 people. But she also said that be mindful of a show after you've just had a brilliant 5-star review. Because what often happens is people go, oh, 5-star review, I'll come to that. And they don't read anything about the show. And the next day, the audience is really peculiar because of all these people going, why am I here? And it can be that people are just desperate to jump onto something and they don't question, they don't read it. My show is called An Evening Without Kate Bush. Well, she didn't look and sound like Kate Bush. No, that's not the point. Read the marketing material. And that does annoy me when people judge you for not being the thing that they wanted you to be based on preconceptions that are based in nothing other than ignorance. But it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
Have you had things go, other than that show that you wrote, go badly wrong?
Well, on stage?
Yes, on stage.
Oh, gosh, people have fainted. I've cut my hand and bled all over the stage. I've been sick. I mean, I'm old school, so I'm very much Dr. Theatre. Get on with it. I think I've been through situations on stage where maybe now people might do a show stop. But sometimes mistakes are joyful. Some lovely things go wrong, and I think the audience love it. I'm trying to paint a picture in real time in the new show. I can't tell you if that's going to work out or not. But if it doesn't, I will share the exquisite pain of that.
Tell me about this new show. What's it called again?
It's called The Bob Ross Effect. If you don't know who Bob Ross is, he is an amazing artist. He had a show called The Joy of Painting. He's been dead for 30 years, but there's never been a time that he's been off air in America. And some people knew him. They did a big Twitch watch party in 2015. But during the pandemic, BBC iPlayer and Twitch started restreaming his shows, and they're all half-an-hour art shows. He does a full oil painting in less than half an hour. What's really interesting about him, he's big hair and beard, and he knew what he was doing, calling it the joy of painting around the time of the joy of sex. There's a kind of slightly he's very sensual without being directly, crude or anything. He's just he's warm, and he has animals and squirrels, and he's just very sweet.
With him.
Yeah, he saves animals, and sometimes they pop up in his Peapod the Pocket Squirrel. But I think there's something mesmerizing about watching him, and what's so interesting. He's like the grandfather of ASMR, and people listen to, you know, the people. Some people respond to the kind of like little vocal sounds, and I can't give you a biological definition, but it's a particular sound. Some people, I don't know if I can do this in this, but like tapping your fingernails or rustling, a particular kind of frequency of whispering, and it makes people feel very soothed.
Oh, okay, and his voice,
and his voice does that to people. But really, I was fascinated by him and the fact that he just has this enduring legacy, even though he has been gone for such a long time. And that was a starting off point to look at art and our relationship with art. And not dissimilar to singing. You know, a lot of us sing when we're young for pleasure, and then we get told that we can't sing or that we're not good enough, and then we stop. And I think that happens with art as well. You know, you draw for fun, and then as soon as you get into an art class, and you have to be good.
Sorry, this was something else that struck me, that all these things, all these people that I've had on this podcast, dancers, singers, ventriloquists, magicians, they're all things that we all do on some level as children. We all do the puppet ventriloquism as a child. We all do dancing. We all do sing. We all do art. So it's in all, this goes back to what you're saying, doesn't it? About the creativity in us all. It's where we all start. But at some point in life, from a lot of us, we leave it somehow.
Yeah, it gets knocked out of us, or we get sort of shamed into not, you know, I know people who mimed in the school choir because they were told they were so awful. And Bob Ross's big ethos was that everyone was an artist, and he demystified oil painting. It's a very specific technique. It makes it relatively easy, though not as doing it as quick as he does it, to create something that looks pretty passable. But his whole belief system, and that's what people tuned in for, not just his voice, not just for the artwork, but these kind of mantras. He has these famous sayings that there are no mistakes in life, there are only happy accidents. And there are so many stories of people who were, you know, close to the point of ending their life or having mental breakdowns or addiction problems, and they would watch an episode of The Joy of Painting and suddenly find this kind of almost paternal figure saying, you know, you can do this, you can do this. So that's what that show is exploring, our relationship between mental health and the arts. And then I've also woven into it two personal stories of loss and recovery. So it's a show about creative spirit, but it's also full of playfulness, and there's a dancing fan brush and original songs, and I'm learning to animate.
Oh, that's exciting. And when's that going to be?
So officially it's for the Edinburgh Fringe, and then we'll see if it has good enough reviews to tour. But I am doing a preview. I'm doing previews in Poole, Hastings, Manchester, London, and Henley and Arden.
How many performances will that be before you get to?
5 previews that there is a competition or a selection process called the Fringe First in Edinburgh, and you cannot have done more than 6 previews to be eligible for it. It's a new writing award.
Oh, okay.
And I know it's ridiculous to have these small ambitions, but I've always wanted to win a Fringe First.
Why not?
So I'm at least sort of playing by the rules and not doing more than 6 previews. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
So hopefully that'll be on this summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when's your first preview?
11th of June.
Wow.
Yeah, it's soon.
That's
it's really
soon.
not long, and I still, you know, I can paint the picture, but now I have to paint it while dressed as Bob Ross, looking away from the canvas, and that's the real challenge.
It's so hard, isn't it? It's like when I had the ventriloquist on. He was saying that, you know, everyone thinks it's about not moving your mouth. That's not even half of it, because you've got to act the person you are. You've got to pretend that you don't know what the puppet's about to say. So these things are complicated.
It's the split. I mean, Nina Conti is just astonishing as a ventriloquist, and that fact that she can improvise as well. You know, she does this wonderful thing where she's it's so clever and so playful, and the mischief in her eyes, which is delicious.
Right, now at this point in the proceedings, normally I get someone to teach me something.
I know. What can I teach you? I know nothing. I mean, I could teach you a little bit of babushka in Russian, maybe.
I can do that. Well, I don't know if I can do that, but I can try doing that.
I mean, I'm learning it secondhand, so I will repeat it. So this came about because there was a woman who grew up in the 80s in London, and she was Russian, and there were no positive role models for her, and she used to get teased and bullied at school all the time for being Russian. And then suddenly Babushka, Kate Bush's song, came on the radio, and suddenly everybody wanted to be her friend. And she said it didn't matter that babushka actually means grandmother in Russian, and that she was pronouncing it wrongly, because it shouldn't be babushka, it's babushka.
Babushka.
So we tell that story in the show, and we do a little bit of babushka in Russian.
Babushka. So is there other lines I can sing?
Anna Chatilla provierit musha. Anna Chatilla provierit musha.
Mucha.
And you see now there'll be Russian people going, that's not right.
That's when anyone watching from Russian, this is only my first attempt.
Yes, it's much easier when you're singing it.
Yes. No, I do remember that bit.
Yeah.
I do remember that bit in the show. So you said you're going to Edinburgh.
Yes, my 30th year of going to the Fringe. Can you believe it?
So it obviously works for you, because I did have a question about...
You did, a lovely cynical question, which I enjoyed.
A bit of a cynical question about whether it actually helps most performers or actually is another way that big organisations can make lots of money.
I think the mistake is to think of the Edinburgh Fringe as a single unit. It is a series of hundreds of venues, hundreds of producers, hundreds of promoters. The people who do well out of the Edinburgh Fringe are the landlords, probably the taxi drivers, anybody... in advertising. It is a huge, huge financial investment. It is obscene how much money it costs.
But that's what I mean. I don't think I've ever met anyone who said...
But I don't think it exists to exploit people. I think at its heart, in its purest sense, a place to come and bring work. I think there are fantastic models like the Free Fringe. There are several Free Fringes, the PBH and the Free Fringe Festival, and places where you can bring work, where they've got a real kind of community feel of, come here, we're not going to charge you for the venue, you collect your money in a pot, which is what we did with an evening out without Kate Bush the first time. They're really about forming a community of people who are going to just put shows on and see what happens. But there are, of course, massive, big name comedians who might come and do a couple of nights. But to be honest, it's so tough. Obviously, after the pandemic, there's a huge... The whole city is still recovering, and the festival is. They changed the laws about landlords and rents, and so it was always expensive. But now it's sort of 2-3 times, and you get ridiculous people charging, £1,000 for 2 nights in a hotel.
You're talking about accommodation.
Yeah, and I think that is really tough. I hope it will change, but I still think if you can get there, I still think it's an incredible place for artists. Everybody's hustling, and it'll cost a huge. For me, it's a trade fair. To be able to go and to run a show for 23 performances is a gift for a performer. And it is still a place that I go to see other work, to feel connected to my community as well. But it is massively, massively expensive. I can't lie.
But the other thing that struck me, and I'm, as you probably can see, I'm white and sort of middle class and have had a relatively privileged upbringing, that a lot of that is present in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
All the universities, all their dram socks bringing stuff. There's a lot of, again, because if you don't have the money, it's very difficult to do it. And also the audience there. Okay, it's mixed, but still tends to be, from what I've seen of audiences.
Well, it's so expensive to get there, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of Edinburgh people come and see shows, which is really wonderful. And especially on the Free Fringes, actually, they're very supportive. But yeah, absolutely. There are some bursaries, some opportunities for people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. But yeah, it is unfortunately a hugely privileged place.
So how do we... Just in the few sentences.
How do we change that?
How do we change it? Not Edinburgh, but in general terms. How do we make the arts, which, as you've discussed, is of huge benefit on all levels, mental health, education, communication, confidence, everything. How do we make it more opportunities for more people? And I don't even mean necessarily making their careers, but having the opportunity to do it at all.
I think on a very personal level in your life, away from the industry, it is to value it. It is to give it value. And if you have children who love to read or love to play or love to write, to celebrate and elevate that rather than it being seen as a treat. And, there are theatres who will give away tickets to people. Well, in the pantomime
but hold on. But if you have a government...
No, but you asked me, how do we?
Oh, how do we? Yeah, yes.
And I can't answer for the government.
No.
If reform get in, the arts is absolutely screwed. You asked me in my list of questions what my least favourite word is, and I had prepped the word reform, so don't get me started. No, obviously, when theatres are doing the best that they can, we've lost, marketing departments, you have to pay for everything. The touring model is so screwed. But I personally can't impact government, but I can value and cherish the arts with the people I know. I can give free mentorship, which I do. I do a whole outreach to solo performers. I run a solo support group with my friend. I run drop-ins for solo artists. I go and support. I always pay for my tickets because I now can. I don't accept a comp from anybody. I used to very much when I was struggling, and I'm trying to give back now that I am a little bit more senior in the industry in every way that I can, and get out and support fringe theatre and, buy tickets. And
Okay.
yeah.
And you're right. Us as individuals, in all aspects of life, we have to do as much as we can ourselves. But there's only so much an individual can do. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, that what governments can do and education policies, and why is it that lots of schools don't even have the opportunity to teach anything? It's because at some level it's not really valued.
It isn't valued. It isn't valued. And as an artist, you can make work that pushes back on that. And also taking ownership of your work and not waiting for funding means you can knock on different doors. You can perform in different spaces, get up and speak, get up on open mic night and speak, be more political with work.
Yes. Well, and I think that is true. Maybe the arts is another way of being more political.
And that's what Cabaret can do. There are amazing performers like Gato Chocolat, Johnny Woo. You've got Bryony Kimmings, you've got Victoria Melody, you've got brilliant artists, Afia Campbell, people who are speaking from the heart, talking about political things, getting involved with grassroots things and being visible. And that's the other thing, Cabaret, you've got fantastic queer performers, you've got neurodiverse performers, you've got people saying, here I am, I'm here, take notice, I'm going to speak. And to the conventional doors that might say, oh no, that you're not the right shape, size, there is a place and there is a home. It's like the kind of circus feel. And that's still a place that I want to be and be wanting to presenting work.
Do you think, as something I've mentioned before, whether people understand what it's like being a performer, what it actually entails?
I remember my dad coming to see a show, and afterwards he said, how did the person operating the lights know which lights to press? I was like, well, you see, Dad, my working day, I leave the hotel at 10 o'clock in the morning. I drive for 3 hours. I turn up at a venue. I do a 4-hour tech. We teach the venue what the lights are. We brief the front of house. We wash with costume. We have half an hour dinner. And it's the working day is 12 hours. So there is a lot of stuff that happens before getting on the stage. And sometimes people message and go, why is your show £18? That's far too much. You're only on stage for 2 hours. And I think, firstly, I will see very little of that money because obviously money has to go to all the other people and bless the theatres. They've got to pay people for lights and electricity and infrastructure in front of house. My one little bugbear is people taking commission on merchandise. I don't take commission on your bar. You shouldn't take commission on my merchandise.
They certainly shouldn't.
Yeah, but that does happen. Some venues take a 25%. It's quite shocking. So yes, I think there is perhaps rather than a misunderstanding, maybe just a lack of curiosity that there are lots of things that go. But in a way, that's what we are offering people is a beautiful couple of hours in the theatre. And they shouldn't be worrying about me on the road and when I'm washing my costumes and what my journey to the venue was like. I think there is a misconception that all performers are limelight, whore-hungry, notice me all the time. And I very rarely get recognised. But when
Would you like to be famous?
No, not particularly. I have some friends who have been very famous and have had their privacy stolen from them, and I like my life very much. I love that when I finish my gig, most of the time no one knows it's me. It's delightful to be able to just go home on the bus or whatever and just be me. I think a level of success buys you some currency in this world. But to be honest, there is no career ladder. You have moments in the sun. I've had moments when I've gone, I'm in the West End. I think I might have arrived. And then, 6 months later, you're going, oh God, I don't know how to pay my rent. And so it's this kind of up and down.
And that's the life of most performers, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think take nothing for granted, enjoy what you've got, prepare for the future as much as you can. But, my dad had a stroke a couple of years ago and lost his sight at the age of 80. None of us were expecting that, of all the things that might happen to him in his old age. And he's adapted incredibly well. But take nothing for granted. Take nothing for granted and just try and cherish what you've got. Do I want to be famous? Not particularly. Not if it means losing my privacy.
I suppose by definition, it means losing your privacy, probably.
Yeah, I don't think I want to be somewhere other than I am, really. I like what I do. I feel very lucky to do it.
Well, you're lucky. That's true. You said reform was your least favourite word. Your most favourite word?
So many. I was thinking I use the word beautiful quite a lot because I like using it to describe things which are feelings or people, but also delicious. Delicious in relation to people is quite a nice word. I think I've used it during this chat. They're just lovely words.
Words are important, and that's what you're dealing with, I suppose, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was weird thing. I was sending someone some flowers and I was writing the card and I pressed the wrong button and AI had decided to give me a different card. It decided to improve my wording on my card. And I felt really like, no, that's not my language. Stop it. That's not what I want at all.
Do you ever use AI?
Well, we all use AI
No,
all the
but
time.
I mean, for the creative process.
No, I used it. Well, that's not true. I used it to help me create a picture because I wanted to see if the concept of the picture worked, which was Bob Ross's face made out of vegetables. I just thought, I just want to see if that works, which was partly because my husband had just got a new phone and he wanted to practice with the app. But no, certainly not for writing. My only, many fears for AI. It's here. It's technology. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. People will use it for good and people will use it for bad. My concern is that people will not care enough to know the difference, because there is something different written by a human, pure mind. And, but I know therapists who use it to summarize conversations and things. And I know for a lot of neurodiverse people, it's very, very helpful for taking notes and things. So I don't believe that in its essence, it is a bad thing. I hope very much that the one place that I will feel safe is my liveness on stage, because I cannot be replicated.
No, and I think that's true. And I think that's why I might be slightly biased in this, as you are, but I think we potentially are entering a golden age of entertainment for very much that reason, that with so much elsewhere being automated, digitalized, we hanker after community and liveness and things that are real.
But it is sadly, my husband is a writer, and the number of jobs that come up wanting writers to teach AI how to write better. You think,
really? Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
There's a play in itself somewhere.
There's probably being made right now.
By AI.
By AI, yeah.
Well, Sly, Sarah-Louise, thank you very much. It has been an absolute delight. I hope your new show goes well.
Thank you very much. You have to come along. You get to sketch along.
Oh dear, audience
Opt-in drawing.
I'm very English. Audience participation and me don't sit well together.
You made it through the Kate show. You were okay.
Yes, but I made sure that I sort of was reticent and not noticed, so I didn't have to go up on stage.
I would never have invited you, because your body language would have told me everything I needed to know.
Good, exactly. That's why.
Read your nervous system.
Exactly. Yes. Anyway, thank you very, very much.
Pleasure.
And thank you everyone for watching today's episode of the Variety Show podcast. For more information on this episode, past episodes, and future episodes, do visit us on our socials at the Variety Show podcast. Thank you and goodbye.